What's the most embarrassing thing you did as a kid that you think about to this day? Story 1. My friend and I were playing with a robot dog toy, but it stopped working. Then I remembered my parents kept spare batteries in their bedroom dresser. While searching for batteries, we accidentally stumbled upon my parents' personal stuff, some adult magazines and a toy. Our first thought was to play a prank on my older sister and sneak these into her room. But then we realized it wouldn't be funny to her since she wasn't involved in finding them, so we just grabbed the batteries and went back to fixing our dog toy. Cutting to the chase, my friend decided it'd be hilarious to hide the adult stuff in my room. I probably shouldn't have trusted her, but when I briefly left for the bathroom, she slipped them under my bed. I didn't notice all weekend. Then on Monday at school, she came up to me laughing uncontrollably, asking about my parents' reaction. I was confused until she spilled the beans. My parents' stuff was under my bed. I rushed home after school, hoping they hadn't noticed anything missing from their drawer. When I got home, my mom was acting weird. She asked about my day in a strange way. My heart sank, thinking, oh no, my parents probably think I took and used their stuff. I dropped my bag in my room, checked under the bed, and everything was gone. My mom had definitely found it. I felt so embarrassed and awkward that I avoided them as much as possible. I should have just explained that my friend pranked me, but the thought of discussing their personal items made me want to disappear, so I didn't say anything. To this day, my parents probably believe I took their things and hid them under my bed. For those curious, I'm a girl. My relationship with my parents wasn't drastically affected, though it was a bit awkward. My friend definitely has a wild sense of humor. I do plan to tell my parents eventually, but they're quite reserved, and it's still uncomfortable for me. Maybe one day. Story 2. Oh boy, this memory from second grade still makes me cringe. A family friend had a newborn, and they already had a little girl. I was with my dad watching as the other dad was teaching the older girl how to change a diaper. Now this was right after I'd seen the first Austin Powers movie. So in all my second grade wisdom, I blurted out, "Does that make you a naughty baby? Yeah?" Just as the little girl was helping with the diaper change. My dad was utterly embarrassed. Looking back, I'm equally embarrassed. Despite my recent tough times, knowing I've made people laugh or cringe has oddly made me smile. Huge thanks to my mom, who I convinced to let me watch Austin Powers, and to my dad, who didn't care until I embarrassed him in front of our friends. As a future mom, I can see how my own kids might one day embarrass me just as much. Oh, and I forgot to mention that I did it all in an Austin Powers accent. And for those in the US, a nappy is a diaper. Whoa, this girl's really got her mojo at a young age. Story 3. I was in primary school, I believe it was year 6, around 11 years old at the time. One day during lunch break, the deputy principal was having an intense discussion in his classroom, acting as a mediator to resolve a conflict among a group of uncomfortable-looking kids who were gathered around him. I happened to be using one of the computers nearby and listened curiously as I overheard bits of the unfolding drama. To this day, I have no idea what came over me, but for some reason, I decided it was appropriate to walk over, lean down, and slam my palms on the teacher's desk as if I owned the place. I said, "So what's going on here?" and looked expectantly at each of them, as though they were about to divulge the entire story to me. The deputy principal, a STEM and older gentleman not to be messed with, simply looked at me incredulously for a couple of seconds and blinked. What? None of your business! Everyone stared at me in silence for several seconds. I sheepishly walked away. I still have no idea what prompted that behavior. It was completely out of character for me. I occasionally cringe when I think about it. Story 4. I hid from my mother in Macy's or somewhere similar when I was about 7. I thought I was being funny as I jumped into different clothes racks. I remember the staff looking for me too, and I hid inside a long jacket as they passed by. I sneaked around for about 20 minutes, and I recall heading back to my mom when I found a security guard talking to her, and she was starting to get upset. He said something like, "From what we can tell, she's still in the store, running between the coat racks, hiding from everyone." That's when she burst into tears. She yelled my name, and I popped out right behind her, saying, "You got me." She turned around, grabbed me, and gave me a huge hug. I'll never forget the expression on the security guard's face when she hugged me. It was like, "Yikes, you silly kid. You're in big trouble when you get home." It never occurred to me that my mother might have thought I was 20 years later, and I'm still a genius at hide and seek. I'd like to address two things. One, if your child ever does this, please don't smack them in the store or at home. I probably deserved it, but my mother didn't resort to that. Instead, she sat me down and explained why she was worried and the dangers of such behavior in public. She explained how easily I could have been taken and that it was not safe. In my perfect 7-year-old logic, I retorted, if nobody can find me, how are they going to me? She chuckled and simply made me promise to never hide like that again. 2. Funny enough, I'm still absurdly good at hiding. I've always had a knack for sneaking by and evading people. The key is misdirection. And yes, I've played a lot of Metal Gear Solid and Splinter Cell games. Ah yes, Metal Gear Solid, the OG tactical espionage action. Story 5. When I was a child, we took a field trip to the Field Museum here in Chicago. During our lunch break, I wandered off to the gift shop to see what they had. I had a huge crush on a girl named Victoria in my class and spotted a ladybug ring for a couple of dollars. Knowing she liked ladybugs and having some money my parents gave me for shopping, I decided to buy the ring and give it to her. Feeling nervous, I waited for the right moment. Finally, I decided to take a leap and walked up to her near the end of the trip. She was with some friends, which made me even more nervous, but I summoned the courage. When she looked at the ring, she laughed. Her friends joined in, and she casually tossed the ring into the trash. I was utterly devastated and struggled to hold back my tears. Even though I'm over it now, that incident severely damaged my confidence with girls for a long time. Looking back, I might have embarrassed her by giving it to her in front of her friends, which might explain her reaction. Regardless, it remains one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Right in the feels, bro. If you sympathize with this guy, just wait until you hear Story 8. What the girl did there was beyond awkward. Story 6. In middle school, we were assigned presentations on various diseases, covering basic information like symptoms and who's most susceptible. My group was assigned diabetes, so we started researching. At the time, we had a simplistic understanding that diabetes came from eating too much sugar, and it was a condition only fat people had. I didn't grasp type 1 diabetes then, and I barely do now. So, in what we thought was comedic genius, we decided to poke fun at overweight people with diabetes during our presentation. With big grins, I clicked the presentation remote to the next slide, revealing images of morbidly obese individuals. I confidently stated, and this is what a person with diabetes looks like. I anticipated uproarious laughter, but instead the room fell into an eerie silence. Everyone just sat there, seemingly frozen. Our teacher seemed shocked and didn't react. Then one girl spoke up. That's not funny. My dad has diabetes. We immediately shut off the presentation and awkwardly took our seats. I wish the ground would swallow me whole. Story 7. There was this guy in geometry class who constantly made fun of me. Fed up one day, I reached a breaking point and pulled out my phone, pretending to have a conversation with snipers who were supposedly trained to track people who had been mean to me. Every time I recall that moment, I cringe myself into a ball. Some more context. I was in high school at the time, way older than I should have been to act that foolishly. I tried telling the guy that I had people following him, warning him to lay off or else. Instead, he just laughed in my face, and it all unfolded in front of a group of people, so naturally they all thought I was a bit of a dweeb. Story 8. I'm 39 now, and yet I still recall my first almost kiss. It was incredibly awkward and embarrassing. Back then, I was at camp, innocently playing spin the bottle. Being quite naive, I didn't fully grasp what I was getting into. When the bottle landed on me, I stood up, ready to kiss the older, more experienced boy in front of me. However, in my naivete, I ended up doing something weird. I practically unhinged my jaw and opened my mouth really wide to kiss him. His reaction was immediate. He stepped back, took one look at me, and simply said, "No." Story 9. I was at a sleepover in middle school, thrilled with my new pajamas, hoping to make friends with these girls. However, in the middle of the night, I woke up with a start. I had wet myself. I had to stealthily sneak into her sister's room, where our bags were, to find a change of pants. All I could find were jeans. When everyone woke up, I claimed I got a cold and changed into jeans. On my way back home, my mom pointed out a smell when I got into the car. In a panic, I quickly blamed it on their beagle, saying the dog smelled bad and slept with me all night. Story 10. My mom and dad often used affectionate pet names for each other, like Honey, Pumpkin, and Lovey. I enjoyed playing dress up, pretending to be my mom and imitating her mannerisms. One night, when they believed I was asleep, I overheard my parents arguing, and she called him a rat dirtbag. Unfamiliar with the term, I assumed it was a made-up term of endearment, akin to Pookie. About a week later, my dad came to pick me up from daycare. Engaged in a game of house, still in my mom role, I innocently exclaimed in front of all my classmates and their parents, "How was your day, rat dirtbag?" Yes, I accidentally called my father a rat dirtbag in front of all the parents during Christian daycare pickup. That's bananas. Adults should really watch what they're saying around the kids. Have you ever had an equally embarrassing childhood moment? Share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel for more. Story 11. During my childhood, my parents were incredibly adamant about ensuring I never smoked. Understandably so, as most of my grandparents had passed away due to smoking-related incidents. However, they instilled this message a bit too forcefully. One day in kindergarten, a classmate was absent. The next day, when she returned, she seemed incredibly sad. When we asked her what happened, she revealed that her grandma had died of lung cancer. Without fully understanding the gravity of my words, I callously told her it served her right. Understandably, the teacher was horrified. The next day, I apologized to the best of a child's ability, but the memory of that moment has haunted me ever since. Story 12. When I was a child, I was staying over at a friend's house for a sleepover. I needed to use the bathroom late at night, but it was located down a super creepy and dark corridor. I was too scared to go alone. My friend suggested that I relieve myself in one of his baby brother's diapers, and I was so desperate that I actually did it. To my horror, his mom walked in to find me holding a soaked diaper all over the floor, while my friend was laughing hysterically. Every time this memory resurfaces, I rate it to a solid 1 out of 10 on the wish I could hide now scale. And unfortunately, it pops into my head at least twice a week. Story 13. In 4th grade, my mom brought me back to school after hours for some PTO meeting or something similar. As boredom struck me, a somewhat brilliant idea struck me too. I claimed that I needed to retrieve something from my desk in the classroom, and I was granted permission to do so, giving me a few precious seconds alone in the room. Once there, I swiftly grabbed a piece of paper and scribbled, "I love you, Kelsey," before slipping it into Kelsey's desk. She was the girl I had a crush on but had never spoken to, and then I left. The next day, as I entered the classroom, I found everyone gathered around Kelsey's desk, trying to decipher who had written the letter. Naturally, I joined in, attempting to decipher the handwriting to uncover the mystery of this secret admirer who couldn't even spell her name right. The most awkward, or perhaps the best part, was that my teacher knew I had been alone in the room the day before. She never exposed me, but I'm pretty sure she knew. Mad props to that teacher for not snitching on this guy. Story 14. When I was a child, my dad had custody of my sister and me every other weekend. On Fridays, our mom would drop us off with him, and he always took us to a nice shopping area, where we'd buy some Babysitter's Club books and have dinner. We consistently parked in the same garage, and I had a habit of racing ahead, running 3 floors down the stairwell to hide under the stairs. My grand finale was to jump out and yell, "Boo!" when I heard my dad and sister approaching down the last flight of stairs. However, one time, I executed my plan and realized it wasn't my dad and sister at all. It was an elderly couple who must have entered from a lower level ahead of my family. They were probably in their 70s. The woman gasped, clutching her chest, and they nearly stumbled down the stairs. I was absolutely mortified. I don't even recall what I said to them. My dad apologized on my behalf, but he and my sister teased me about it for years. Even though it's been almost 30 years now, my face still gets flushed just thinking about it. Story 15. When I was in high school, I asked a teacher in front of the entire class if she was a member of the Mile High Club. At that time, I had never flown before and had no idea that the Mile High Club referred to people doing intimate things on a plane. I was mistakenly thinking about memberships where you sit in private rooms at the airport, waiting for your flight and receiving complimentary items. I felt incredibly embarrassed afterward. Yes, she was an attractive teacher, and no, she didn't respond. Story 16. When I was in kindergarten, waiting outside to be picked up by my mom, I spotted her approaching. Excitedly, I closed my eyes, dashed towards her, and gave her a big hug. But when I opened my eyes, it turned out I hadn't aimed correctly. I was actually hugging the wrong woman. To make matters worse, one of my classmates yelled at me to stop hugging their mom. That memory still lingers in my mind. Story 17. When I was in elementary school, I had a less than ideal habit. I used to pick my nose, but not in a discreet manner at all. My attempt at a cover up was dropping my pencil by accident and using the excuse of wiping my boogers onto the carpet while retrieving it. However, there were two major issues with my foolproof plan. First, my nose picking skills were far from discreet. Second, I did this pencil drop booger wipe routine approximately every 5 minutes. Dude found a gold mine in his nose. Story 18. I once went to a girl's house to ask her out, but her mom informed me that she was sick. Later, I saw her tweet. A guy came to my house to ask me out, and my mom had to cover for me. Thinking back to that moment still stings. Remembering the look on her mom's face when I explained I was there to ask her daughter out still makes me feel physically ill. Story 19. When I was young, my mom took my brother and me to the circus. We bought frozen slushy drinks, and in an attempt to break up a large piece of ice, I jabbed the straw to the bottom of the styrofoam cup, unintentionally creating a hole and causing cherry slushy to spill all over me. I started crying while everyone was silent, watching the tightrope walker perform. There I was, screaming, covered in red, and suddenly a spotlight shone on me. The audience grasped, thinking something terrible had happened, which led to the show being paused for a few minutes. My mom's face turned even redder than my shirt. Every now and then, I still reflect on that moment and sometimes call my mom to apologize, especially when I'm a bit buzzed. Story 20. In the first grade, on my last day before summer break, I had an accident and soiled my pants while playing Monopoly in class. Despite my attempts to ask, my teacher kept telling me to hold on. To cut a long story short, while we were all gathered on the floor playing Monopoly, it got so bad that it lifted me about 2 inches off the ground. It was such a mess that I ended up being sent home for the day. I still reflect on that moment because I'm unsure whether I could hold it any longer or if perhaps it was done out of frustration towards my teacher. Either way, it was an incredibly embarrassing experience. Story 21. I had a sleepover at a girl's house where she shared a bedroom with her younger brother, and they had bunk beds. Unfortunately, I was one of those kids who still had accidents. In the middle of the night, I realized that I had one and completely soaked her brother's mattress. I was utterly mortified and couldn't muster the courage to tell her mom, who kind of intimidated me. Instead, I cleaned myself up, put on my regular clothes, and hid my soaked nightshirt. In my wisdom, I found clean sheets and flipped the mattress, hoping to conceal the evidence. But it didn't work. Her brother ended up telling everyone. And while she and I remained friends, I was never invited for a sleepover there again. Story 22. I had a crush on a boy in my art class and discovered, through mutual friends, that he lived just a few blocks from me. Instead of simply talking to him at school like a reasonable person, I came up with an absurd plan to get his attention. At 4 a.m., I snuck out of my house with a large bag of garbage, walked all the way to his place, scattered the garbage all over his lawn, rang his doorbell, and then sprinted back home. The next day at school, I casually asked him if anything strange happened at his house the night before. He mentioned something did, and that's when I revealed that I was the culprit behind the prank. He just awkwardly responded with an, "Oh, okay," and then avoided talking to me for a few months. Looking back, I can't seem to understand what on earth I was thinking. Talk about a bold move. She really left a lasting impression on that boy. Story 23. In third grade, I sneezed and farted simultaneously. The kid next to me burst into uncontrollable laughter, almost crying, when I attempted to play it cool by nonchalantly clearing my throat, pretending it was just a cough. However, there was no way to cover it up. It dawned on me that maybe he didn't realize girls could fart, and, well, that it could smell. Story 24. In 5th grade, my teacher randomly asked if anyone in the class had eaten buffalo meat before. Without thinking, I proudly announced that I had eaten buffalo wings the other night. It felt pretty embarrassing when everyone burst into laughter. You know what? That is understandable. That is completely understandable. Story 25. I grew up in Indonesia where having maids was common among the middle class and above, so I assumed it was a universal experience. When I moved to Singapore, where having maids was more common among the upper middle class and above, I attempted to rally people against the lame cafeteria food by saying, even my maids eat better than this. It didn't quite have the intended effect. Story 26. When I was in middle school, if I had a crush on someone, my impress them strategy involved finding their parents' details in my phone book, looking up their home phone number and address on white pages, and then impressively reciting back to them their parents' names, home phone number, and address. Looking back, I realized I was essentially a stalker. Yet surprisingly, no one ever reported me. Being a girl probably made it seem less creepy to others, but no. I don't still do this, and yes, I completely understand how unacceptable it was. Middle school me was cringy as hell, but thankfully I've moved on. Whoa, this girl's got a natural talent for gathering intel. She'd make an excellent spy. If you stuck around with me until here, then I bet you enjoy hearing about other people's awkward moments. Stay tuned to What Awkward Situation Did the Nice Guy Put You In? Story 3 had me in stitches. Don't miss it.